He was the most hyped linebacker in college football history, a two-time Butkus Award winner, the face of Oklahoma's Boomer Sooner defense, the guy with the mohawk, the sunglasses, and the attitude to match. He was a first-round pick, a Nike poster boy, and the man who called out Bo Jackson before their legendary collision. But after just 3 seasons in the NFL, Brian Bosworth was gone. Injuries, controversy, and a career that ended almost as quickly as it began. So how good was Brian Bosworth actually? Was he a bust, a victim of circumstance, or a player whose impact went way beyond the stat sheet? Let's break it down. To understand Brian Bosworth, you have to understand the hype. In the mid-1980s, college football had never seen anything like him. At Oklahoma, Bosworth was a one-man wrecking crew. He was 6 feet 2 inches, 245 pounds, and ran a 4.640. He hit like a truck, talked like a pro wrestler, and played with a swagger that made him a star before he ever set foot in the NFL. He won the Butkus Award, given to the nation's top linebacker, twice. He was a consensus All-American. He led the Sooners to a national championship in 1985 and was the heart of a defense that allowed just 8.6 points per game over 3 seasons. He was so dominant that opposing coaches would game plan just to avoid him. But it wasn't just the play, it was the persona, the boss, the mohawk, and the headbands with handwritten messages. The interviews where he called out the NCAA, the NFL, and anyone else who got in his way. He was a marketing machine. And by the time the 1987 NFL draft rolled around, he was the most talked about prospect in the country. But there was a problem. Bosworth had been banned from the Orange Bowl for testing positive for steroids. He'd written a scathing letter to Sports Illustrated, calling the NCAA hypocrites. He was a lightning rod for controversy, and some teams wondered if he was more trouble than he was worth. Still, the Seattle Seahawks saw the potential. They took him in the first round of the 1987 Supplemental draft, signing him to a then-record 10-year, $11 million contract. It was the richest rookie deal in NFL history at the time. The Boz was headed to the Pacific Northwest, and the hype machine went into overdrive. Seattle fans bought the jerseys, the sunglasses, the posters. Nike made him the face of their new Boz campaign. Seeing the Seahawks defense, already solid, was now anchored by the most famous linebacker in America. Expectations were sky high. So, how did Bosworth actually play? Let's look at the numbers. In his rookie year, Bosworth started 12 games, recorded 78 tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. He was named to the NFL All-Rookie team. He played fast, aggressive, and with the same intensity he'd shown at Oklahoma. But he also struggled with injuries, shoulder problems that would haunt him for the rest of his career. In 1988, he started 12 more games, racking up 84 tackles and a sack, but the injuries got worse. By 1989, he played just 10 games before his shoulder gave out for good. 3 seasons, 24 starts, 222 tackles, 4 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries. And then, at age 25, he was done. On paper, those numbers don't scream bust, but they don't scream legend either. So what's the real story? Watch the tape, and you see a linebacker who played with reckless abandon. Bosworth was always around the ball. He had great instincts, quickness, and a nose for the play. He was a sure tackler, rarely missing in the open field. He could cover tight ends and running backs, and he was a vocal leader on the field. But you also see the limitations. Bosworth wasn't the fastest linebacker in the NFL. He struggled in coverage against elite receivers. He sometimes over-pursued, leaving cutback lanes open. And as the injuries piled up, his explosiveness faded. The most famous play of his career, Monday Night Football, 1987. Bo Jackson takes a handoff, bounces outside, and meets Bosworth at the goal line. Boz tries to stand him up. Bo runs right through him for a touchdown. The play became an instant highlight, replayed for decades as proof that Bo Jackson was a freak of nature, and that Bosworth, for all his hype, was just another linebacker. But that play doesn't tell the whole story. Brian Bosworth was a solid NFL starter. He was a leader. He played hurt. He gave everything he had. He just didn't have enough time to become the player everyone expected. So, why does Bosworth still matter? Why do people still talk about him decades after his last game? Because Bosworth was more than just a player. He was a phenomenon. He changed the way linebackers marketed themselves. He was one of the first NFL players to become a true celebrity, with endorsement deals, movie roles, and a brand that extended far beyond the field. He also changed the way teams thought about the draft. Bosworth's career was a cautionary tale about hype, injuries, and the risks of investing in a player with off-field baggage. Teams became more cautious, more analytical, more focused on character and durability. And for all the criticism, Bosworth's impact on the Seahawks was real. He brought energy, attention, and a swagger that the franchise had never had before. He helped build the foundation for the defenses that would come after him. Let's compare Bosworth to other linebackers from his era. Guys like Mike Singletary, Lawrence Taylor, and Chris Spielman. Mike Singletary, Hall of Famer, 10 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro selections, 1,488 tackles, 19 sacks, 7 interceptions. Lawrence Taylor, Hall of Famer, 10 Pro Bowls, 10 All-Pro selections, 132.5 sacks, 9 interceptions, 2 Super Bowls. Chris Spielman, 10 seasons, 1,363 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 6 interceptions, 4 Pro Bowls. Bosworth's numbers don't compare. But remember, he only played 3 seasons. If you project his stats over a 10-year career, he would have finished with over 700 tackles and 15 sacks. Not Hall of Fame numbers, but certainly respectable. But the real difference is longevity. Singletary and Taylor played a decade or more. Bosworth's body gave out after just 3 years. That's the tragedy of his career. Not that he wasn't good, but that he couldn't stay healthy long enough to be great. No discussion of Bosworth is complete without talking about the controversy. The NCAA banned him from the Orange Bowl for testing positive for steroids. Bosworth claimed he was taking them for an injury, under a doctor's supervision, but the stains stuck. He was seen as a rebel, a troublemaker, a guy who played by his own rules. In the NFL, Bosworth was outspoken about player rights, the draft system, and the league's hypocrisy. He clashed with coaches, teammates, and the media. Some loved him for it, others saw it as a distraction, but through it all, Bosworth never backed down. He was true to himself, for better or worse. And that authenticity, that willingness to be the villain, made him one of the most memorable players of his era. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Brian Bosworth's career, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because we've got more stories about the NFL's most fascinating and misunderstood players coming your way. And trust me, the second half of this story is just as wild. When Bosworth's NFL career ended, he didn't disappear. He reinvented himself as an actor, starring in action movies like Stone Cold and making cameos in TV shows and commercials. He embraced his Bos persona, turning what could have been a cautionary tale into a second act. He also became a broadcaster, a motivational speaker, and an advocate for player health. In recent years, Bosworth has spoken openly about the toll football took on his body and the lessons he learned from his brief but unforgettable career. So, how good was Brian Bosworth actually? The answer depends on what you value. If you judge by stats alone, Bosworth was a solid NFL starter whose career was cut short by injury. He wasn't a bust, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer either. If you judge by impact, Bosworth was a game changer. He brought a new level of attention, marketing, and personality to the linebacker position. He was a pioneer in self-promotion, a forerunner of the modern athlete as brand. If you judge by potential, Bosworth was a tragedy. He had all the tools to be great, but his body couldn't hold up. He's a reminder that football is a brutal game, and that even the most talented players can be undone by injuries. But maybe the real lesson of Bosworth's career is about hype, about the dangers of expecting too much, too soon. It's about the difference between being a star and being a legend. Bosworth was a star. For a brief moment, he was the brightest in the NFL, but legends are built on longevity, on production, on the ability to deliver year after year. And that's where Bosworth fell short. Not because he wasn't good, but because he wasn't around long enough to be great. So, how good was Brian Bosworth actually? He was better than his critics say, but not as great as the hype promised. He was a victim of his own body, of the expectations placed on him, and of a league that wasn't ready for his brand of personality. But he was also a pioneer, a player who changed the way we think about linebackers, about marketing, about what it means to be a star. And for that, he deserves to be remembered, not as a bust, but as a trailblazer. So, here's my question for you. Was Brian Bosworth a bust, a victim of circumstance, or a player whose impact went way beyond the stat sheet? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look at the real story of Brian Bosworth, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got more deep dives into the NFL's most fascinating players coming your way. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that don't end the way you expect.